Hello. This time we're going to do a menu. We've done some field stuff now. This stuff is pretty much done. Explosion, debris, lights and particle effects. Only some enemies explode, I said. Now none of them explode. We'll put exploding enemies back in, but I don't think they'll be quite how they were before, and it's not the most important thing left to do. I would say the thing that... two things. One is we need credits because we've used people's sounds now, and I've been just packaging in a credits text file with the files that I've been uploading, but obviously before we ever release this we'd need actual credits that the player can find more easily. And then another thing, game flow, we want the ability to restart the game, because right now, you know, once you get into a state you don't want to be in, you just have to close the game again and launch it. So credits and restart actually can be solved by the same thing, which is a menu. We can do both those things in a menu, and we should have one anyway. Stuff like the goal state in the next level, I think that'll be a future ep, so let's make this... okay, tabs are weird in Notepad. Look, I've said it. I've said what I'm going to do. That's what we're going to do. I don't need to write it down. I'm not on trial here. Before we do that, there is one little thing that we should address, which is that as we, once we trigger a lot of things and we start blowing them all up, suddenly you notice the guards' lights disappear. You can probably guess why that is, because you might remember we had to set this important flag on the explosion lights to make sure that they always showed up. And so what we've got to do is just do that on the guards as well. If Unity ever recovers. It's not quite sure what state it's in right now. It's half playing. That's weird. Should I just close it? Let's do a tutorial on dealing with Unity being weird. I probably would have recovered if I'd left it long enough, but I just couldn't tell that it was doing anything. Oh, my laptop is not plugged in. I should plug it in. Okay. So we just want to go to the guard, and we're not going to edit the instance, we're going to edit the prefab. Click on open here, and then we see the spotlight, and somewhere down here there's render mode, auto. Let's make sure it's important. Those are important. They're actually gameplay elements. If we ever did hit some performance problem where, if we just had too many lights and Unity was complaining about it, I think we'd take them off the small explosion and leave them on the big explosion. I also noticed something else, which is that I think our kick is going in the wrong direction. It's amazing that this isn't a bigger issue than it is, but it's noticeable mainly with the shotgun. If I get the shotgun, like actually I'm firing to the left, and really the level moves to the left when I fire and then recovers. So I can't really intuit this out in my head, but I did what seemed logical to me, which is move the camera in the opposite direction to that we fired. It was transform.forward times negative kick amount. Let's just delete the negative, make it positive, and then the jolt goes in the direction, goes back from where we're firing. I think it's to do with, like, if you move the camera to the left, the level appears to move right. So that's the inversion. Basically, it's inverted twice. Like, one, we don't want it to go in the direction we fire, we want it to go the opposite direction. But then two, we're moving the camera, not the level, and so it's a double negative. I think that's slightly better. It's weird that it doesn't make a bigger difference than it does, but I think that is better than what we had. And also just because we've got a bit of cleanup to do in the scene here, I'm just going to delete these enemies. They are not, the idea is not to have roaming enemies that are seeking you right away. We've still got a railgun beam floating around here. I'm going to delete that, that shouldn't be there. We could also, this wall was only there to test a thing. I think I'm just going to actually delete it and just duplicate an existing obstacle. So I just clicked on it and did Control D, and now I'm just going to, if I hold Control while I drag it, that locks it to a grid. Although actually probably I should move it out of the way and make sure I move everything else first. So railgun we definitely want to keep, put it over there somewhere, and then yeah, this duplicated obstacle, let's move it up there, get our level back to where it was. This isn't a great level. It's not worth actually making a proper level yet because we need guard behavior, the guards roaming and stuff. that is going to define what a level needs to have. Like, does it need to have little alcoves that you duck into as the guard passes and stuff like that? We need to have that behavior in place before we can make the levels. So it's just a prototype testing ground at the moment. So I think that's us caught up. So now we want to make a menu. And we already have a canvas, right? Because we did these health bars. I think this health bar should be much smaller, by the way. And we made a thing called canvas behavior. I'm just going to drag this up to the top. You don't have to do this, but it's just I find it convenient. I'm going to right click on this canvas, and the first thing I'm going to do, I think, is make an image. So I'm going to go down to UI, user interface, and choose image here. And now, looking at the stuff in scene view is a bit weird because I probably covered this when we did health bars, but that's where our image is up there. The game world is the bottom left corner of the canvas. It doesn't really make sense to think of these two things as even occupying the same space. They happen to in Unity scene view, but really we've got to look at the game view to see it. And now we see there's a big white image in the middle. I want this to be a button. And to do that, I might just drag out the width a bit, make it wider. Probably make it less high, shorter. And I think, let me try a little experiment. There's a change I'm going to make, and I just want to see if I can demonstrate to you why we need to make the change. If I pull out the game tab here, there's our button. If I make it smaller, yeah, look, this goes completely crazy. Oh, well, actually, it sort of adjusts eventually. But, okay, pay attention to how much of the game world the button is obscuring. If I make the window too small, it just fills the whole thing. So the problem is our canvas is not scaling to our resolution. Me dragging the window around, it's a bit like people running different game resolutions, having different size screens and stuff. So I want to change that. Our canvas scaler down here, it says constant pixel size. We actually want scale with screen size. And when you do that, what it needs is a reference resolution, which means like, it's actually really nice. This is something I would have killed for in my years of making games in GameMaker, is I'm just going to tell you we're working with, I'm going to type in 1280 by 720. You could put in, I suggest a 16 by 9 resolution, like aspect ratio, because that's what most people have. You could do 1080 by 9, wait, I've forgotten resolutions. Anyway, 1280 by 720 is the one I remember. So let's do that. And basically what they're saying is like, I'm going to design the UI as if it's 1280 pixels wide and 720 pixels tall. And then no matter what the user's resolution, scale it until it fills it. Make that 1280 as big as it needs to be to fill their 1920 by 1080. That's the resolution. I don't know why. I think I got confused whether 1080 was the vertical or horizontal. It's been a while. So yeah, basically, we'll make it as if it's 1280 by 720, and then the end result will be scaled to whatever the player is actually using. And that's great because you can do things like, let's make a button 500 pixels wide. And you just say 500 pixels, and you know that means roughly half the size of the screen, a bit less than half the size of the width of the screen. And if someone's running a totally wacky resolution you've never even heard of, it will still be about half the size of the screen. You don't have to write in percentages. That's what I had to do in GameMaker a lot. It was sort of like, this is going to be 65% of the screen, and I don't know, that was messier to me. So I guess let's just prove that worked. It's always nice to see the results of a fix. And while you're dragging, it doesn't work, but once you release, it fixes itself, right? It's always a bit wider than that central column. So that's cool. Drag it back. And this is going to be a button, so I think I'll make it black. Yeah, so when you create an image, it has no sprite, but what Unity does is just fill it with solid color. And that's actually quite useful for UI stuff, because it's totally legit to have blank solid color for UI elements. Saves you making like a pointless dummy sprite that does nothing. And I want text on it, obviously. So I'm going to right click. So the image is on the canvas, and I want the text to be inside the image. It's going to be a child of the image, because what I want is, if we shrink this button, I want the text to shrink too. I want it to, basically the text to do whatever it has to do to stay within the button. So I go to create game object and UI and text mesh pro. We're going to do this. You can just do normal text, but text mesh pro is what you probably want to learn because it's a much better way of doing text in general. We probably won't use any of its advanced features, but you should learn this way because you will want them eventually for fancier projects. So when you do this, it's going to say it needs to import some essentials. So we're going to click that button, and it'll take a little while. What Text Mesh Pro actually is the normal way of doing text in games is it uses a font and then it renders that to pixels. And then if you zoom in, if you make the text really huge or the camera goes really close to the text, you'll see the pixels. It'll get kind of blurry and pixely and bad. Text Mesh Pro looks at the font and figures out how to sort of do it in vector graphics so that no matter how close you go to the text, it will always be perfectly crisp, and that's really cool. We just close this now. We don't need these examples and extras. I'm trying to close it. It's not happening. Okay. All right. We've got some not very attractive text. Now let's do what I said we'd do. Well, first of all, it's going to be, I think, new game will be the name of the button. And how big do I want it? I'm actually not. It's 36 right now. I'm actually going to click this auto size thing and say that just says make it as big as it can be without going over the size of the container. What is the size of the container? Well, it's 200 by 50, which is a bit less than the containing button. I think that's just something Unity has picked arbitrarily. That's not great because if I resize my button, it's not going to resize the text. The button's just going to disappear behind it. So what we want is for our text to be as big as possible within the button. And that auto size thing means it will be as big as possible within these bounds, but these bounds are just things I had to type in, or I would have to type in if I wanted to change them. I don't want that. I want this to expand to fill. So we click here, and then this expand to fill thing in the bottom right, we want to click that, but read up top here, Shift also sets pivot, Alt also sets position. I don't know if I can give you a concise summary of what those things are and why it matters, but I find it good practice to always set those. So I hold down Alt and I hold down Shift, and then I click this. You can kind of see you're doing the right thing because when you do this, it looks more like what we want, right? That's just the arrows filling the whole thing, no other stuff. Okay, so now it's gone super big. We will, down here in the Text Mesh Pro settings, we can make it centered that way. And then you can also make it centered vertically. I recently discovered it's better to click this button. This is called midline, and it's basically centering vertically, but it pays more attention to like how much space the font actually fills. Different fonts have different alignments, and that can mess you up if you don't do that. But it's way too big, isn't it? So I'm just gonna, now that this thing is set to fill, rather than specifying a width and a height here, you just specify margins. So I'm gonna give it like a margin of 20 on every side. I'm just hitting tab and typing in 20 everywhere. That's not bad. Maybe we'll give it like 15 top and bottom. Yeah, that looks nice. Well, nice. For placeholder UI, it's not bad. And what should we do next? I think let's actually make the button work. Why not? So I'm going to, the actual script that does the button's job, we're going to attach it to the image, not the text, because the image fills the whole thing. Like this size here, this 297 and 56, that is how big the button is, and the code we're going to write is going to want to know is the cursor within our shape, and when it asks for that shape, it's going to want this one. So add component, new script, and I'm just going to write the word button. Yeah. We can call it button behavior. I've let that convention lapse a bit. I got a bit bored of typing behavior every time. Conventions are useful until you don't care enough to follow them. That's my policy. Is it still waiting? No. Okay, so there is a really useful little function. I discovered this in researching this episode, which I've been doing buttons in Unity for God knows how many years, and it changes all the time what the actual correct way of doing it is, but I found a nice way of doing it. What we're going to want to write somewhere in update is we're going to want to write something like if the mouse is within our rectangle, clicking should do something. And for that we need a reference to the rectangle. So we do, actually, it doesn't need to be public, it can just be rect transform. I guess, should I just use the word rectangle? There's an argument for why we shouldn't use the word rectangle, but it is the most convenient thing to say. And rect transform is, where am I getting that? Well, if we go back to Unity, that is what the transform was called now. If I click on the player, it's just called transform. But on a UI element, it will be a rect transform, which just means it's a rectangle. It's a 2D thing, not a 3D thing. And that has all these different settings about, you know, indents and stuff like that. I would guess if I click on a player, I can't do, yeah, I don't get that nice interface for choosing how it's aligned. So we want a reference to our rect transform, and how will we get it? Well, on start, we'll just do, nope, rectangle equals get component rect transform. I guess you call this thing rect transform, the variable, but I find that a bit of a pain to type each time. And so then what does this if statement look like? If, good question, rect transform utility dot screen, rectangle contains screen point. That's logical, isn't it? We have a rectangle, we want to know if a screen point means a point in screen space, which is, we will have soon, because we're going to type brackets input dot mouse position. So rect transform utility, that's a hotline that we're calling. We're saying, hey, do you have a way of figuring out, if I give you a rectangle and a position, can you tell me if that position is inside the rectangle? And if we mouse over it, it's going to tell us, actually, we want the rect transform first, and then we want the screen point second. So I should type rectangle, comma, input mouse position. And is that enough close brackets? Yes, it is. Okay. So now that can be its own comment within this. We've written that line of code. For now, because I just want to test if this button is working before we get into the actual functionality, let's also get a reference to our image. So that's, nope, excuse me. Oh yeah, when I type image, it's not auto-completing. The thing I want really is called image. I am right. They're wrong, I'm right. But it's not popping up. I am going to, if I just hit Alt-Enter right now, yeah, that works. If I hit Alt-Enter, it comes up with a bunch of possible solutions to the problem I'm having, and one of them is using unityengine.ui, and I'm going to click that. What that's going to do is add that line up there. You can just write that line if you like, if Unity doesn't do that same behavior for you, sorry, if Visual Studio doesn't come up with that same option for you, you can do it. Basically, image is a concept that doesn't exist in the most bare bones Unity script. It's in this subset of Unity which is called UI for all UI stuff, and Alt and Enter lets you get at, ask Unity, look, I know what I'm talking about. Can you go and look? Somewhere in your libraries you'll find a concept of image, and I actually found a bunch of them, didn't it? It matters which one you import there. We definitely want the UI one. It's a UI element called image. And I'm just going to call the variable image as well. And same as with the rectangle, we'll just do equals get component image. And then all I want to know is have we successfully moused over it. And so if we've moused over it, then I want image.color to be color.black. And we'll add an else statement, an else section to this if statement, and there we'll say image.color equals color.gray. So if we're not mousing over it, it's gray. If we do mouse over it, it's black. And that way we should be able to tell that this code is working. Obviously I made the button black, so it looks like it's hovered from the start, which it isn't. But now it's gone gray, and when the cursor goes over it, it goes black. Yay! That's a very useful bit of code to have. So now we should make it do something. And I'm going to do this, for this one button, I'm going to write this as I'm just going to hard code how it works, and then we'll change our minds about that in a bit, because we want to make lots of buttons and they all do different things. But for now, let's just make this actually start a new game. How do you start a new game in Unity? It's really just, so all of the stuff we've been doing is in a scene. Right at the top of the window, you'll see sample scene Unity. We have a folder called scenes in our project folder. If we click that, here's sample scene. This is the one we're looking at. If I double click it, it'll ask me to save, and I will save. You don't have to do this, I'm just showing. It takes us back to where we already are. And that's basically what we want to do when the player clicks new game, is take them to this scene. This is the first scene of the game. What I don't want to do, well, first of all, we want that color changed, and then we also want to check, has the player clicked? So input get button down, in brackets we do fire1, that's a stupid name for left click, and now this is the clicking should do something part. And what we want to do, there is something called Scene Manager, and again it's not going to know it off the top of its head. Let me finish typing what I'm typing, and then I'll do Alt and Enter. So yeah, the top thing here is using Unity Engine.Scene Management. Again, it's sort of its own little reference library. By clicking that, it's added this line at the top. Again, you can type it yourself, but I like just if I know what I'm talking about, I'll write what I'm talking about and then ask Visual Studio to figure out what it needs to do to make that work. Scene Manager dot load scene, yes, and then so this will load a scene, but the thing we've got to put in brackets is a string. So we could type what's it called, sample scene, but we don't want to do that really because we're bound to rename this. This is a stupid name for the scene. What I really want, rather than having a hard-coded value here, let's have a public slot for it. So if I do public scene asset, let's call it first scene, and then, oh, I guess scene asset also needs to import something. The first option here, using Unity Editor. I'm going to click that. Yeah. Scene asset is a thing. So yeah, it's just a variable type that can store a reference to this scene. And when I go back to it, we should find on our button, let's actually name this image object, I'm going to call it button because this really is the object that has the button stuff on it. And yeah, there's this little field for first scene, and I'm just going to, I could drag it from here. I'm actually going to click the little target here because there's only one scene in our whole project, so I can just find that very easily there. So yeah, now our code says when if the mouse is within our rectangle, our button is being hovered, and we clicked, then load, oh yeah, good job I checked because this is still the old code, load first scene. It's complaining because it wanted a string and we've given it a scene, so we do first scene.name. So we're going to find what the first scene is, which is the reference we already have, and then we're going to ask it what's its name, and then load the scene by its name. Don't know why you have to pass it a string, but you do, so we will. But yeah, that means if we rename this scene now, this will still work, even though it's loading it by string, because each time it looks and asks the scene, hey, what is your name? And so if the name has changed, we're fine. So to test this, first I'm going to actually do stuff, and then if I click new game, yeah, we're back to where we were. Great. The next thing our menu needs probably is a way to go back to the game, right? We're in a menu mode, we want to get rid of the menu, right? So I'm going to duplicate this button. Maybe I should, at this point, before I make two copies of a thing, let's make it a prefab. Drag it down here. Now it's a prefab, and now I can duplicate it, and they'll both be instances of the same prefab, and if I change the prefab, they'll both change, which is a good thing. This one, so I can drag this button down, and if I click on the text, I can type in a new name for it. This one's going to be resume. But actually, I don't want to be manually positioning every button. If we have 5 of these, I don't have to manually set the position of each one, and then if I rescale them, it's all going to mess up. So we will, within our canvas, I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to create an empty game object that I'll call main menu. I'm going to give it a component called vertical layout group. And then I'm going to drag this button into it. And then I'm going to drag the other button into it as well. And so they have, because they're both children of a vertical layout group, they get laid out vertically. Right now they have laid out such that there's no gap between them at all. If I increase the spacing variable here, there will be a gap between them. And if I have loads of elements, the gap will be the same between all of them. They've gone a bit wonky, haven't they? They're not quite centered. That is because child alignment, these are children of the vertical layout group, is set to upper left. Let's make it be set to middle center. I think I also just want this main menu. Right now it's a 100 by 100 image it's a 100 by 100 rectangle in the middle of the screen. I can't. Let me just check. There's a reason that I don't want that to happen. Yeah, okay. If I make loads of them, it goes off the bottom of the screen, right? Really, we want the whole thing to be centered. The reason that's happening is that I'll add an image to it just so you can see how the size of it. So if that white image is where our vertical layout group is. So it's actually a small thing in the middle, and then we've overstuffed it with elements that then spill out to the bottom, and that's why it's gone off center. So the layout group is centered, and it says that all of its children should be centered as well, but we're not seeing that, and that's because we've made it too small. It actually can't contain the stuff, and when it overflows, who knows what's going to happen. So let's do what we did before with the in the same way we got the text to fill the button, let's get the main menu to fill the screen. So we open that up, we hold Shift and Alt, and we have it fill the screen. And now you can tell it fills the screen because it's gone completely white. I find it really useful just to add an image component to anything that's sort of invisible. Let's make it visible so we can see how big it really is. And I'm just going to uncheck that for now because we don't need to be that big. That's great, but now it's not really obeying our spacing, is it? We said 18 pixels and it's doing, I don't know what that is, but it's more. That's because child force expand, the worst phrase in the world, really. Don't force expand your children. Let's uncheck height, and now it makes it as small as, it obeys the spacing basically, does what we asked it to with the spacing. I don't think we want to expand width either. I don't think it matters at this stage, but just those settings in general, I like to turn them off. Okay, we don't need that many buttons, but we will need, what the hell, we do need more than 2. So one of them will be credits. One of them will be resume. Let's make one for quit. And then we don't need this last one. So we've got new game, credits, quit, and resume. But all of these are buttons. They all run the button code, and the button code just loads the first scene. So that's not very good. We need all these buttons to do different things. And so this can be a tricky problem. I've gone through many different ways of approaching this, most of which are unsatisfactory to different degrees. But the one I sort of discovered right at the end of this process on Tactical Breach Wizards is, well, not that process has ended, but most recently is we can basically have the button in the same way that it has a field for scene here, and other things have fields for game objects that you can slot in there and stuff. We can actually have it make a field for a method for something like this. He struggles to find an example of a method. These are all methods, but just like get random shake amount. We could have it refer to that. So let me do that. Let's do a public. They're called Unity events. If I do Unity event, and again I'm going to do Alt and Enter because it needs to import this top one called using Unity events. And we'll say event to trigger. So to test this, this line of code here that we wrote, what that really does is starts a new game. So let's cut that out, and we'll do a public void. Remember, void is any method that doesn't return anything. And we'll say start new game, doesn't need an argument, and it's just going to have that one line of code in it. So that's the same thing we were doing before, we're just giving it its own name. And now, instead of left-clicking being hard-coded to start new game, instead we're going to say event to trigger. Nope. Event to trigger. We want it to actually happen, right? Event to trigger, let's trigger it. And the way you do that is .invoke brackets. It would seem intuitive, wouldn't it, to do something like this, but that doesn't work because event to trigger is not a method in itself. It's not its own function. It's a variable that stores a function. So on that variable we do invoke, and that's the same thing. Wow, I already made a pig zero of that. So this is the same functionality that we had before. In theory, we're using a variable now. And when I go back to my button, we should see a new slot here. And it's going to be an unusual slot. You probably haven't seen one like this before. It's a list. I guess we could have loads of events triggerable from one button. We only want one. When we click the little plus here, it's going to ask us, not for a method initially, it's going to ask us for an object. Like, what object do you want to run a method on? And in this case, it's going to be us. So I'm going to drag our own button into this slot. That's the object that has the component on it that we're going to run a function of. Then it says no function, well, we do want it to run a function. So when I click this, what this is giving us is a list of all the components on the game object we gave it. And the method we want, it's in the button script, isn't it? That's why we wrote it. When I go to button, there's actually a whole lot of stuff here that I don't know about. I guess these are standard built-in methods that we're not using. And right down here is start new game. So that is a method we've defined and has to be public. I forget if I actually mentioned that, but the word public there is important because we're going to access it from outside of that script. We're going to access it from the inspector, which, same way with variables, when you make them public, they pop up here. And when we make that public, it's accessible here. So this ought to do exactly what we just did. So I can move around, and when I click new game, we go back to the start. Great. The reason we did all that is that we don't want to... What I don't want to do is write a different script for all 4 of these buttons. They're all buttons, they should all run the button script. I just want to change what they do when you click them. And so now it's a variable, so we can change it. Of course, we don't have variables for this. And one way to do it is I could write all of the variables in the button script. Like every button knows all the things a button can do, and then in the inspector you just choose which thing it should do. That's not a bad way to do it. But I actually want a sort of central menu manager kind of thing. And when we made our canvas in the first place, we gave it a canvas behavior. I'm going to open this up. It does very little. I thought I was going to open it up. Yeah, all it does is gives references a reference to it, so that other things can access it. I think this is a good place to put our start new game function. So I'm going to cut it from here, and I'm going to paste it into canvas behavior. So this is really like a menu manager. We could rename it. I won't go through that because it's just, I think you already know how to rename things, but basically rename it here and rename the file. We actually need to import, should we just copy all of those using things that we had before? Events, scene management, and UI, or even the editor as well. Let's just copy all of that and paste it up top here. Yeah. By the way, when these go, some of these went dark and some of them are still light. That's because the light ones are the ones that we are using. So all these dark ones, we're not actually using anything from those yet, but we want them there. And its current complaint is that first scene is not defined here, which is true. We defined it in button. So, and that was a weird way to do it, right? So let's cut that out and put it in scene, sorry, in canvas behavior. So we've moved it over now. Doesn't really make sense for every button to have to know about what the first scene of the game is. There should be one central place where that information is stored, and it will be this one. And again, I can just click the little target here. The slot has appeared. Click the little target, sample scene. So let's do another check where the thing will behave exactly as it already did if all went well. But just to prove I haven't broken anything, I have broken something. This is why it's good to verify things. What I didn't do is I haven't changed this, right? So previously we told it to look on the button for this thing, and now it's saying missing button, start new game, doesn't have one. Now we want to drag in the canvas to this object slot here. So what thing do you want to run a function on? It will be on the canvas. And what function do you want to run? Well, within canvas behavior, you should find something called start new game. And there it is. And I'm trying to think what the next easiest one to do is. The next easiest one is very easy, but it's one we can't actually prove works. So public void quit. Excuse me, no, not on application quit, just quit. And the code for that is just application.quit. That, oh sorry, that needs brackets because it's a function. So that just tells the game to quit. That is how you quit a game. And I will do this just to show you how you sort of hook up another button. So our quit button is this one. Or we might as well name it while we're here. Well, let's double check that it is the quit button. It says the word quit, and I'll just copy that word and then go up here and name the button that. And then in this event to trigger thing, so one reason that this is a nice way to do it is that these are all children of the same prefab, and so this slot exists for all of them now because I edited one, but the contents of it have not propagated because I set up that new game functionality. I did that just on the instance. I didn't do it on the prefab, and that means every instance can be different. And so on this one, again, we'll drag in canvas to the object. For the function, we'll say go to canvas behavior, and you should find a quit function. And I won't test this because it literally does nothing. When you're running the game in the editor, it can't quit, like it's not going to close Unity or whatever. I think it should just leave play mode. That's how I would handle it, but no, it's standard Unity behavior to just ignore the quit command when you're running it in the editor. Once we want to compile the game and give it to other people and make it a standalone application, then obviously quit will work. So I think the next one we'll do is resume. And resume, what's that going to do? It's going to hide this menu. So this is another thing that I think should go in canvas behavior. I think that whole main menu, let's have a reference to it. Game object main menu. And let's also have a public game object for current menu. Because we're going to have the main menu, we're going to have the credits menu, we might have other menus down the line. And if I was to make a public void hide menu, then what I would write in there is current menu dot set active false. And then I think on startup we will say current menu equals main menu. Will we do that? Yeah, that's fine for now. Just trying to decide, like, when the game starts, do you want the menu up or do you want it down? So, wait, I didn't do anything yet. This resume button, again, we'll go find the text that says the word resume, and I'm going to copy it and then paste that into the name of that button so we don't forget what it does. And then there's this event list. Let's add one. Again, we'll drag in the canvas. Again, we'll go down to here, go to canvas behavior, and then we should find hide menu. And now let's play the game. Didn't work. Because the main menu variable has not been assigned. Oh, that's the whole thing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so my idea is, we don't actually need this yet, but drag in main menu to here. So my idea is, what do I want to happen if in the editor, if I just unchecked main menu here, it disappears, right? That's what we want to happen at runtime. We don't want to destroy it or anything, we just want to hide it. And disabling is a good way of doing that. So we don't need the main menu variable just yet. I guess we kind of do. Anyway, I've made it two variables for a reason that will become clear. When I click resume now, it goes away. Great. Problem is we can't get it back. We can resume, but we can't get the menu back. Like, I keep hitting escape because that's just the logical thing, but of course we haven't told the game that escape should bring up the menu. We just know it should. So let's do that next. Let's, in update on canvas behavior, we'll just do if input.getButton down, brackets. We'll just write the word menu there. We don't have a menu control yet, but we'll create one. When that happens, I want to hide any current menus. Let's just write the most logical thing right now. Current menu equals main menu, and we'll say current menu set active true. So yeah, whatever. Make the current menu main menu, and then turn main menu on. And we need to set up that key now. So we go to, we want project settings somewhere, and it's here. Edit project settings. Input. There's this. It looks like it's saying axes, but yeah, controls are called axes for some reason. There's a load here. There's a bunch of double ones. It's all a bit of a mess that Unity has created for us. We've already got fire 1 is left click, fire 2 is right click. We're not going to do fire 3, so I'm just going to replace this one with write the word menu there. Positive button just means what key. I'm just going to write the word escape in lowercase, and I'm going to delete this one. Don't want mouse 2 to do it. So I think that's everything. It just says there's a control called menu. Escape is what triggers it. And that should be all we need. Hopefully. So resume gets rid of the menu, escape brings it up. Now actually if I hit escape again, it doesn't do anything, so let's make it work like a resume button should, which is if current menu not equal to main menu, then I'll actually say whatever other menu you might have up, let's hide it. Hide menu first. Then set the current menu to main menu, and then turn main menu on. And what if it isn't? What if the current menu is already main menu? Then in that case we just want to hide menu. Yeah, arguably, maybe it makes more sense to do it the other way around. So we say, if it is equal to main menu, then all we want to do is hide it. And if it isn't equal to main menu, hide whatever else. Set the current menu to this, and then set it to active. And then I just need one more close bracket down here. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, hit escape. Oh, no, it doesn't work. I know it doesn't work. So when I put escape once, it dismissed it, but then I couldn't bring it back with escape. That's because we only bring it back if current menu is not equal to main menu, but actually hide menu currently, it sets the current menu to inactive, but we should also say current menu equals null. Null, I'm sure it's come up before, but it just means nothing. Set it to nothing. It's like setting a number to 0. Is it? Maybe not. Let's not get into that. That should fix it. Nope, didn't fix it. What is the reference we don't have? Current menu. Oh, okay. I tried to. Yeah. Okay. So what happened there was the current menu was not equal to main menu. It was equal to null. But the first thing we do in that eventuality is hide menu, and then we try and set the current menu to false. We try to deactivate it, but of course it might not even be a thing. We might not have one. So if it doesn't equal null, then we should make it false. And either way, we should then make it null. Yeah, escape now toggles the menu. That was more work than you think, but it works now. And on the left, you'll see the whole hierarchy going faded out and faded in. And on the right, you'll see the current menu being set, going back and forth between nothing and menu. And so that whole concept of like having a current menu is going to be useful now, because now we want to do credits. Maybe as a starter, I will just duplicate the whole main menu. It's kind of crazy, but and call this one credits. And I only really want 2 buttons here. I will delete, doesn't really matter which, I'm just going to keep 2 of them. One of them I want to be the actual credits, and so I'll type in, I'll just copy and paste it right now actually. Here's our credits. Nope, I deleted all the credits. Okay, I'm going to paste it in here, and I wish I could do, I'm just going to do a really quick and dirty thing here to get rid of the tabs, the indentation. It also gave us a free new line as a bonus, for no reason that I can see. Why can't I just... I'm just trying to put some text in a box, man. Why are you giving me grief about this? Why can't I see my own cursor? All right, anyway. This is all a confusing mess on screen, isn't it? Because our main menu is up too, so I'm going to disable that. And then our credits menu, it's spilling all over the place. Let us, first of all, rename this. Credits text without the extra X. And then I'm just going to make it bigger. Until it's comfortable. I will make it wider too. This is a text box, it's not like a button. And in fact, speaking of which, it's not like a button, so let's remove the button component. This is, I'm going to right click this. I started with the button prefab because it had the image and it had the text, and that's just easier, but it isn't a button. It's not, we don't want this to be an instance of the button prefab. If we change it to how our buttons look or how they behave, we don't want the credits text to change. So I'm going to right click on it and say unpack prefab completely. Unpack just means don't be a prefab anymore. It's nothing to do with prefab, just make it its own thing. It's a unique object now, and you can see it, it's no longer blue. And this resume button obviously is going to be a back button, but we haven't done that yet. Yeah, now that it's no longer a prefab, I'm going to remove this button component. It's not a button. The text, I think it's gone rather large, hasn't it? Let's set a max size for this. So it's auto size is good. If we make this thing tiny or something, we might want to do that. But I'll just set a max size for the text here. There's all these auto size options here. You can't really read the text of those. They overlap a lot. But yeah, I've set it like 26. And I guess let's credit ourselves. We're also involved in this. It wasn't just the free sound people. I don't know why it's not letting me see my cursor there. That's very annoying. Sounds from freesound.org, and most things I'll write my name, you should write your name. And that's our whole credits. Last thing we need to do is this resume button. It's not really a resume button, is it? It's a back button. So right back, and then I'll delete it for no reason. Rename resume to back, and then we don't actually want it to, right now I'll dismiss the whole menu. I don't want it to do that, I want it to switch menus. We don't have any code for that yet though. So I think back in our canvas behavior, we set up this slot for main menu. I'm going to create a new one for credits menu. And then we need a method to switch between these. We need a function that switches between these. So just like we have hide menu, I think we'll do one like that that's public void show menu. And we'll want it to give us a game object of menu to show. And what should that do? I think first it should hide any menus we do have. Then it should, if the menu to show that we've been passed is not null, learned a lesson about that, menu to show dot set active true. It's probably apparent by this point, but set active is that enabled or disabled thing. It's a little bit weird because that checkbox, like if I check or uncheck a component, like that image on the canvas, no, not on the canvas, sorry, the main menu. If I uncheck or check that, that's called enabling and disabling, and that's a very important word that has meaning in lots of different places. If I uncheck or check a whole game object, that's setting it active and setting it not active. That's not called enabling and disabling. When you do that, it enables and disables the components? No, let's not make any claims about that. Get into semantic problems there. But yeah, it's two different things, and it's two different methods when you're doing that in code. So our canvas, we've now got a slot for credits menu. Let's drag our credits menu in there. And because our credits menu is a parent of all this stuff, if I set it not active, it goes away. And so switching between menus is going to be a matter of turning one of these things off and turning another thing on. And so our back button, let's have it. Right now it's canvas behavior.hide menu. We don't want that quite. We want canvas behavior.show menu. And remember, this is a method we've defined that requires a game object. You've got to pass something into it. And rather pleasingly, this little interface has a way of doing that. So we can drag in what thing we want to show. And I want to show main menu. So that's how we'll get back from this button. And that also is how we'll get to it in the first place. If I set unactive the credits menu, it's awkward to say, and then go find our credits button. Again, I'm going to rename it while I'm here to credits. What do we want the credits button to do? We want it to do something to the canvas. In particular, within the canvas behavior, go to show menu. What menu do we want to show? We want to show the credits menu. I guess it's getting a little bit confusing here. We've got like 3 different things with credits in the title. I'll drag this over here. So I will rename this now. This is the credits menu, isn't it? And this is a credits button, so I'll call it that. So there's credits button, credits menu, and credits text, and those are different things. I think that all should work now, unless I've forgotten something. So if I click credits, we get credits. And if I click back, doesn't work. What does it do? It's enabled the main menu, but it hasn't disabled the credits menu. I think that's because when we show menu, although we set it to active, we actually don't change what current menu is. Current menu should be menu to show. And I'm saying we'll do that even if menu to show is null, because we might want to pass in null for that sometimes. Maybe. Anyway, either way, whatever we've been given, that's what current menu is now. So that ought to fix that, I think. Go to credits and click back. Yay, go to credits, click back. Click resume. Awesome. Click new game. Also works. Credits. Quit. Does nothing, but it shouldn't. And so that is it. Our menu is done. It doesn't pause the game at the moment, actually. That would be kind of nice. But shall I try and do that just real quick? This would be really quick and dirty, but what if anytime... Oh, hey, actually, no, there's something we should definitely do, which is this thing right here. This is old code, isn't it? We're manually showing that menu. Now we have a function for that. Show menu, main menu. And show menu actually already hides whatever menu exists, so we don't need that line of code either. So now it's really nice and clean. And, you know, makes perfect logical sense. But I am going to say that every time we show a menu that isn't null, let's do time.timescale. I'm really interested if this is going to work. It might totally fail. If it fails, we'll forget this whole thing. I didn't practice this part. So if we're showing a menu that isn't null, we'll set timescale to 0. So time is paused. And when we hide a menu, we're going to set it to 1. Now, you might notice that show menu actually already runs this. So show menu is going to set the timescale to 1, then it's going to set it back to 0. That's fine. I don't think that will cause any problems. But if we run hide menu and nothing else, then we'll set the timescale back to 1. So pausing is setting timescale to 0. I'm optimistic this will work. Let's get ourselves into a actiony situation. Stuff going around. When I hit escape, pauses. Okay, I went to credits and I fired a gun. That's probably going to happen. And then when I resume, it resumes. Hey, that's cool. Bonus feature. Alright, now the menu really is done. That thing of like, it fires your gun. Oh, and I can also turn around while I'm using the menus. That's something we can look into later. But that's definitely menu basics done.